my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Sonia Pone. She's a clinical psychologist specializing in individual, couples, and family therapy. She's an adjunct professor at Wayne State University's College of Medicine. She's the president of the Michigan Psychoanalytic Foundation and the president of Women Exchanging Business. Thank you so much, Dr. Pone.
Good morning. My children offered to come along today as audiovisual aids, but we're falling apart here. But I thought you might want to believe that I know what I'm talking about, so I asked them to stay home. Okay?
Can everybody hear?
Can you hear me? I really don't need a mic, but can you hear me? Okay. Okay. How many of you have ever gone to the store with a child who has grabbed a candy bar, and you're taking the candy bar away at the checkout line, and this child starts to whine, and you start to say, look, we have to have dinner, I'm not going to buy a candy bar right now. And when you say no, no becomes an activator for an escalation. And now we're into a shrilling. Please, I want to have one, you promised me. And it gets higher and higher, and people all around you are looking at you. And finally you give in, and you say yes when you want to say no. How many of you have gone through that? Really? Only that few of you? You have all such wonderful children. We are living in a culture today of an inability on parents' part to comfortably say no to their children. We are living in a yes climate where we're told on TV we're entitled to meet our needs, to be gratified. How many of you have seen the Citibank card commercial, You Deserve It? There's a commercial where they have a little girl and she's kind of walking around in the fairyland and there's unicorns around her. And this is for MasterCard, and they say, you can't give her this, but MasterCard can help you give her everything else. These are the types of commercials we are bombarded with constantly. Our children see on the average 40,000 commercials a week. Now that sounds like a big number, but they've gone through the TV stations and they've watched all the commercials. This is what your children are bombarded with. This notion that we are a feel-good society who has to meet its needs immediately. There is no delay of any type of gratification. So no longer means no. No just signals to a child it's time to escalate, okay? But no is important because as parents you have a very important job, and that is to help your child tame urges that are unhealthy for them, to help them control emotions that are unhealthy for them, to help them build self-respect and respect for others and integrity. They have to develop self-discipline first. And self-discipline is something we don't see much of anymore. The clinic that I'm associated with, on a daily basis, we get 7 to 10 referrals a day from parents who cannot get their children to do anything they want them to do. We have 30-year-olds living with their parents. I had one couple come in, and they came in specifically for my help, how to get their 30-year-old out of their house. She doesn't work. She graduated from college. She has a legitimate degree, but she won't leave home. So I said, what does she do all day? Well, she visits her girlfriend, she gets her nails done, she gets a pedicure, she gets a bikini wax, she goes shopping. I said, how does she do that? What do you mean? I said, what does she pay? How does she pay? Oh, well, we got her a card because we don't want her to be without money, so we got her a credit card. And I said, now how does she get from one place to another? We got her a card. And I'm sitting there looking incredulously at these parents, and they don't want their child to be unhappy. They don't want her to be discomforted, and they don't want to be discomforted by confronting her and dealing with her. This is what happens at that end of the line when we don't learn to say no at this end of the line. Okay? The yes messages that kids get are, everything should be easy, everything should be conflict-free, people should understand their needs, people should anticipate their needs. You know, this instant gratification is just built in right out the gate. Parents are going into schools arguing with teachers because the child came home from school and said, my teacher gave me a C, and that's because she doesn't like me. She likes all the other kids, but she doesn't like me. Or it's not fair, and this and that. And there used to be a time when parents would say tough love. But now parents go running into the schools, argue with the teacher, try to get the child's class changed, try to get them another teacher. And why are they doing that? They're running down the road, trying to sweep the road clean of any anxiety for their children. What they don't understand is that anxiety and adversity, these are the things that help children develop an ability, number one, to tolerate anxiety, but also to problem solve. We have 20-somethings, 30-somethings now who are out in the work world, who are faced with stressors on the job and cannot cope with the stressors because they've never had to deal with stress. They've never had to problem solve. They've never had to figure out, how do I negotiate my way through this? How do I work with the people I'm with that I don't agree with? How do I cope with an annoying boss? They've never had to deal with it. And so they get out into the work world, and it's a disaster for them. Okay. Now, the do it now message that we get, we're told we're foolish if we wait for anything. Children are conditioned to expect, either directly or indirectly, directly from the media, that don't delay, buy it now, you deserve it, and indirectly from us. And when I say indirectly from us, they watch us in the pursuit of meeting our needs. They watch us, you know, fathers and mothers arguing about which car they're going to purchase and who's going to get what, and mom talking about the name brand she bought, and arguing with the husband perhaps that she wants it now and she has a party to go to. They're not getting good messages from us. Children learn more from us than they do from anybody else. When they come home and they're listening to dad come home from work and say, you know, to his wife, I think I made about 10,000 today from the patients I saw. That's not a good message. But if dad came home and said, today I did this for a patient, I worked on something, I solved something, it's a completely different message. Children are narcissistic. They're in love with themselves. They can't even pass up anything that has a reflection on it without looking in it. You know, but that's the nature of the beast. They're children. They're born narcissistic. They're born in the center of the universe. Our job as parents is to help them understand that they are not the center of the universe. They are unique, but they are also part of a collective society. But children today are raised to see themselves as the center of their own universe. And parents are colluding with them to make that happen. And you have to remember the children that you're raising now are going to be the children in your old age that you're going to turn to take care of you. And if you raise children who are so narcissistically invested in themselves, what chance do you think, or what time do you think, or what effort do you think they're going to make on your behalf when they're older? And that's something you really have to consider. Teachers also are noting that because these children have no threshold for anything taking time or working through anything, they're noticing that they won't do their math problems if they're difficult, because it takes time. You have to sit with it. You have to work with it. They don't like to read. It's not interesting enough to them. It's not active and stimulating enough for them. They don't have patience. And you know, we have a lot of ADD and ADHD in our society, and that's certainly a brain-based illness or illnesses. But we have the biggest population in this country now of children who have attention deficit disorders that have nothing to do with chemistry or biology. It is impatience that is making them struggle with focusing, with sitting, with having the patience to sit and work. And that's not being reinforced by parents, because parents feel that they're only good parents if they make their children feel good. Well, you're not a good parent if that's your only goal. You have a job as a parent to put scaffolding onto your children so that they can leave you at some point and go out into the world and negotiate that world in a healthy and productive way, and to be an active participant in society and to make a contribution, not to be the center of their own universe. We do everything very quickly. Kids get this kind of message, like a strobe, all the stuff they get on TV, those, what do you call those, Xboxes that they play with, everything is like this. So when they get into a classroom and they have to sit, this kind of attention deficit that's been created by all the technical things that they deal with, whether it's computers or Game Boys or any of these toys and TV, it's very hard for them to sit calmly and listen and try to focus. So you'll see kids acting out, creating problems, because it creates a rush. It creates excitement. All the toys that they have, all this computer stuff, all this kind of mentality of do it now, get it now, affects their brain, and the way an addict is affected. When alcoholics or drug users, their addictions happen almost immediately, because there is a rush in the brain chemistry of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And dopamine is the feel-good neurotransmitter. And once the brain has had that rush, there is a push to recreate that rush. Well, the same thing happens when kids are constantly doing things like Game Boys and these Xboxes and computers and texting and everything this, it's a rush. Teachers cannot get cell phones out of the schools. They have been begging for, the schools to set policy about cell phones. So when the schools do it, the parents become upset, not the children. The parents become upset because they think they should be able to access their child. In school, why should you be able to access your child? If it's that important, call the office. They'll get your child. But so we have kids sitting under their desks doing this, and a teacher is pretty much rendered helpless, because these kids are so adept at doing this that they don't have to look at it. They're just doing this, and they look like they're paying attention, but no, they're composing letters. And we can't get parents to crack down on this. Okay. The yes culture feels that activity should always be fun. We don't frustrate, we don't discomfort, we have no place in our culture for that sort of thing. Children learn that pain, whether physical or psychological, is always bad and should be avoided at all costs. Okay. Virtues like perseverance, patience, commitment, determination, and diligence have to be learned. And the lessons aren't always easy, and they aren't always pleasant. If you don't help your child tolerate discomfort, tolerate, having to delay gratification, their adult life and even their early young adult life is going to be very difficult for them. And you're not going to be able to run into the boss's office and say, you're not treating my sonny boy the way he deserves to be treated. He's a good boy and you don't appreciate him. It's just not going to work. All right. No is definitely more difficult than yes. Yes, keeps things quiet and peaceful. Thinking kids, if your kids are happier, then of course they're going to love you more. The lessons from Yes are entertain me, everything should be fun, rewards without work, and instant gratification. You cannot develop skills to be successful in work or in relationships. They demand self-discipline. Even in a marriage, you need to have self-discipline. You need to have both respect for yourself and respect for others. You have to be a good listener. You have to be not so narcissistic that you cannot appreciate your partner's subjective reality and listen to it. But these kids are struggling with this. I specialize in marriage. And when I tell you I am now working 7 days a week, I have never worked 7 days a week in my life. And I am now working 7 days a week because so many marriages of young couples especially are falling apart. They don't know how to compromise. They don't know how to share. They don't know how to negotiate with each other. They have a sense of entitlement that's incredible, and they can't understand why there is so much conflict. You know, because by the time they get to my office, things are pretty bad already. This is going on. We've never had this much marital couples, this many marital couples coming in as we have right now. All right. Okay. You know, when you cannot say no to your child, there is something that happens. You empower that child. You empower that child to run your family. You empower that child to run you. And I have to tell you, that creates, whether you believe it or not, more anxiety in the child than it really helps. Even though the kid looks like he's happy that you've given in to him or her, okay, you can go to the party, okay, you can go to spring break or on spring break, you're actually creating anxiety, because children need to feel that their parents can help them contain their own emotions. And if they're so empowered that they can manipulate you all the time, they are not really safe internally. They don't feel safe internally, because mom and dad are supposed to help them control things that are inappropriate and urges and feelings that are inappropriate. Okay? All right. The brain has a lot of neurons. There's 100 billion neurons in a newborn baby. Each of those neurons are 10,000 branches. What they do is all the messages they get, they begin to weave a pathway, a neural pathway. And once that pathway is in place over the years, it becomes very difficult to redirect that pathway. And the more that children take in a message of, no, you don't have to make the effort, no, you don't have to listen to me, no, 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 which is they're hearing as yes, 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 because you are saying yes. The pathways of the brain are developed where they become comfortable with having their way. They become comfortable, it's a rush, and they keep going back to trying to catch that feeling again of I got mom, or I got dad, or I got them to do this. And parents get very frustrated and they start yelling after a while because they're aware of what's going on. But that isn't going to help you, that yelling. That's a gratifying. I will never forget my oldest daughter, arguing with me when she was 2 years old. And I'm escalating right with her. I'm going up there. And I'm just, and suddenly I look up and she's standing there with this smirk on her face because she had reduced me to a 2-year-old. And they do that. They can do that. We have to have a threshold for their discomfort. It's very hard when you love a child to create discomfort. But if you don't, you're going to have chaos. You're going to have such difficulty with these children, because once they hit adolescence, you know, if they're going to develop a personality disorder, it's going to get there by adolescence. So you need to, right out the gate, be able to set boundaries around your children, to set up a value system that you put a premium on, and make sure that they very specifically understand that value system, and that is the value system of the family, and it will be adhered to. You can't just let them feel that there are no boundaries, that there are no parameters around them. Each of us in this world has boundaries around us. Each of us has parameters. We know that we have to stop for a red light. If we don't, we have anarchy. You know, if everybody decides not to do it, not to follow the rules, not to respect the boundaries, we're going to have chaos. There is a reason for rules. Rules contain, they protect the integrity of whatever the rule is about. And that is so important for children to really grasp, that it isn't a free-for-all, that just because mommy and daddy love them, it doesn't mean they're going to say yes to everything. No builds greater character than yes. And I'm not saying that you have to say no to everything. Obviously, you have to use some judgment on your own part. Okay. Now, the brain with all these neurons is like a computer that's been already programmed with software. There are certain things that the brain is already wired for. The fight or flight instinct, the seek pleasure, avoid pain instinct, the social connection instinct, the seek approval, avoid disapproval instinct, empathy, and guilt. Okay, so we all know what the fight and flight is. You know, when you're faced with some danger, your body starts pumping adrenaline. You have to make a decision: do I stay? Do I go? Do I fight? Do I run? The seek pleasure and avoid pain obviously produces a feel-good chemical. We like pleasure. We're attracted to things and experiences that increase the levels of pleasure in our life, and that's why. You know, you see these kids going back to things like alcohol, marijuana. We have difficulty sometimes diagnosing children, because some children may be bipolar, some children may be ADD, some children may not be any of the above, but because they're using so much marijuana, they're always mellow yellow, and we can't tell what's going on with them because it's so massive. They've learned to self-medicate. You know, feeling good and not having to deal with stress takes you down the road of self-medicating because you don't have the internal tools to help yourself. So you go to a substance. The substance then helps you, and you self-medicate. The issue of connection is very important. This is the #1 enemy of connection. The cell phone. All right? One of the schools in town asked me to come in and do something for them. And I stood in the hallway when the kids were coming in with parents. And this is the way the parents and mothers came in. You know, they're holding Jimmy and talking on the phone. And if you ask them, did you spend time with your child today? Oh yeah, I took him to school, we drove in the car together. Oh, and what were you doing in the car? Oh, my friend Mary called me. We're going to meet at yoga and then have lunch afterwards. I said, really? And what did your child have to say this morning? And suddenly, they look at me like, what do you mean? No, not what do you mean. You have videos in your car, your cell phones in the car. These are disconnects. These are disconnects. Your child needs to be connected to you in order to even feel some response to the boundary setting that you try to lay out there, but also to feel secure emotionally. This is a disconnect. After a while, what children do is, well, okay, mom's tuned out, so I'm going to just take care of my stuff and do it my way. You So they get their little cell phones, because we get them, what, ages 8 or 9 now, kids get cell phones, some of them younger, and they're, Well, mom's here, how can mom say don't do it when she's sitting there on the phone? This is the worst thing you can do with your children around you. Unless you've got an emergency or some real business urgent need, you should not be on the cell phone or any phone when you are with your child. You should be interacting with that child, especially driving to school, coming from school, going to appointments. You're in a very nice place. You're in a contained car. It's just you and them. What better place to connect with them than in that car? Okay. Now, seeking parents' approval is the foundation also of conscience. What we have found is that children have learned how to suspend their conscience. We see this every day on the news. Children harming other children. All right. We just had an incident in Melvinville. Did you all read that, about that incident? Melvinville High School had homecoming. They won the game. They had a homecoming dance. Afterwards, parents paid for rooms at the Comfort Inn, brought in beer. 2 football players raped an inebriated freshman girl. Now, in order to do that, and you can't really blame it on alcohol, because theoretically people really don't do what their character wouldn't allow them to do, even under the influence of alcohol. You have to be able to suspend your conscience to do that. When you steal something, you have to be able to suspend your conscience. When you break the law, you have to be able to suspend your conscience. And more children are able to suspend their conscience, which is frightening. You see athletes, they don't even have role models anymore. You know, there's no Babe Ruth or Joe DiMaggio anymore. Not that they were pure as driven snow, but we didn't hear anything negative. Now, whether it's a politician or a sports figure or an actor or an actress, you know, everybody has the ability lately to suspend their conscience. That's going to create a problem. Okay. By the way, if you have any questions while I'm talking, I'm happy to take them. Okay. All right. The ability to feel other people, to have empathy, is very important in developing a conscience. If you cannot feel another person's feelings, there's a problem. All right. When you have 2 children fighting, one sits at the computer, has been on the computer a long time, the other sibling comes over and says, now it's my turn. And the first one says, no, I'm not done yet. But you've been on for an hour, I'm not done. One slugs one, the other one slugs the other, and before you know it, you've got this brouhaha going upstairs. And you can't just go up there and say, work it out between the 2 of you. No. You have to separate those children, send each one to their room until they can calm down, and then bring them back together. Tell them, number 1, what was inappropriate about what happened. Number 2, what the consequences are going to be, what the values of the family are, and if they're not lived up to, there will be consequences. But once you give those consequences, and I know a lot of you don't follow through on those, you have to follow through. You have to follow through. I was sitting with a 13-year-old boy who's supposed to go to Disney World with his class, and he'd gone into his mother's closet when he was angry with her and shredded a couple of her outfits. He was angry, really angry. And so we talked about what the consequence was going to be, separate from the fact that, you know, he got a good talking to. Well, he wasn't going to Disney World. Now, lost their deposit and everything. But how do you, in good conscience, send the child to Disney World at that time? You can't. Somehow you have to get the message. You have to say no. You have to say, you know, there's a basic law of physics that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? If you see one action and it doesn't have an equal and opposite reaction, you can't build a conscience. They have to understand there are outcomes for behavior. Every behavior has an outcome. It affects someone other than themselves. I really can't stress that enough. It affects someone other than themselves. If you take a kid's lunch money, if you post on Facebook garbage and dirt about another student, if you text bully, you're affecting somebody's life. These kids don't get it. They're affecting someone else's life. The devastation that they cause in that other person's life. All right. And here, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
A lot of these things are intentional. Not intentional, but they are conscious of what they're doing when they're doing.
Yeah.
So what about, like, when we drive a carpool, and I wake my son up an hour early, he's just slow. It's not that he's trying to make everybody late. We've never been late to the carpool, but he's just late. So then how do you, is that something you, just, I want you to consider, or like...
Well, when you're saying he's slow, what do you mean he's slow?
They're just slow. Kids are like, they're just slow. And it doesn't go to the market, put on your tie, put on your shirt, put on your, you know, like, time to go. You have to get ready, the kids are starting to come to the car.
No sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Right, there's no sense of urgency.
They're doing it to be, they're normally very fast, very quick, very smart, but just doing learning, but it's not an intentional.
What time do you go to bed at night? What time do you get?
At 6, and our couple will be at 7.
So, an hour earlier into bed. Okay, and they have to get up, and the alarm gets put on the
Yeah,
hour.
they have no problem. It's just, they're
All right,
you know,
well, then you say, look, here's the deal. We have to be here at this time. I know it's hard for you to get up in the morning. It's really important, by the way, that you validate that you understand what they may be feeling. You know, this isn't an autocratic situation totally. You have to let them know you understand what they're feeling. Nobody likes getting up in the morning. But you have to then set a rule thing, you know. We have to be up here this time. The carpool is coming at this time. Clothes get laid out the night before. All done. Okay, good, so you know what you're doing. And if you can't get going fast enough, here's the time you're getting up, here's the time you have to be ready. You have a clock in your room. Okay? If you're not ready, you're going to go to bed even an hour earlier tonight. Next night. All right? They hate going to bed early. Keep going an hour earlier until they start getting up. Okay? Can you do that? Yeah. What?
Not getting up and going to bed in the same motion.
I've got a heckler. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
What do you do when you have a child and you go to punish them and you say, well, you're not going to this tonight, and then you say, well, I didn't care about that anyways. And then I turn around and I say, okay, so now you're going.
Now, children will always tell you they don't care.
Right, that's just a manipulation.
No, that's just to show you they don't care. It doesn't bother
So
them.
just say, okay, so fine, you're
Right.
not going to say
Right.
anything.
My daughter would never eat dinner, ever eat a meal. So once we went to Dairy Queen, and we were going to go to Dairy Queen for dessert. And I said to her, look, if you don't eat dinner, we're not going to Dairy Queen. You're not getting a Dairy Queen. I don't care. I don't like Dairy Queens anyway. So we get to Dairy. She doesn't eat. I clear the dishes. We go to Dairy Queen. And, you know, her sister gets one, and I get one, and her father got one, and I didn't get her one. She says, where's mine? No Dairy Queen for you. We told you, this is the consequence. You have to eat your dinner. You're not going to live on dessert. And she pitched a fit right in front of everybody, crying, and some lady kept looking back at me like, you know, a mother depriving her child of a Dairy Queen. You know, and she's giving me these dirty looks. I was ready to crawl into a hole after a while, but she didn't get the ice cream. And believe me, I would have happily given her the ice cream. But no, you just can't do it. You just can't. You've got to stick to your guns. You know,
There's so many battles that can be picked. You kind of got to pick and choose which ones are important.
absolutely, absolutely. You have to pick and choose, but here's the thing. You drive in a carpool, so you have a responsibility to other people.
We've always, like, it's not, we've almost been 15 minutes over this, so it's just that I'm the one going, okay, don't get your time, but it's just that continuous, you know.
Yeah, but it's you going da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm saying, don't do that anymore. If you tell him, these are the rules. If he doesn't do it, an hour to bed, an hour early to bed, okay? And believe me, he doesn't want to. He wants to stay up. Yeah, yeah.
I'm having trouble finding appropriate consequences that I can follow through with on a regular basis. Just for some basic things, can you talk
What does your
to
child like the most?
TV, video games, that type of thing? I mean, I feel like we're always taking that away though. But what, you know, you hit your sister, this happens. You say something nasty to your sister, this happens. Or and vice versa to the daughter as well. You know, they're going back and forth.
Yeah.
A lot of fighting. What do you suggest for appropriate consequences?
Well, if they're doing a lot of fighting, is the room wired with everything under the sun?
No.
Games and
Not
TV?
necessarily, not always. I mean, yeah, they have those things. It's especially hard. I've got a 12-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son, and it's going both ways. The daughter, I actually am finding more difficult times, sometimes finding appropriate consequences that fit what she did or what she said, and him as well.
Is she social?
Yes.
So that's one thing you can use, whatever event, if there's one coming up in the near future. Does she have a cell phone?
Yes.
Then the cell phone is gone. Not for a day, but for 4.
For one thing said.
One thing.
Okay.
Well, you know what I'm saying, one thing said. And, you
That's
know,
where I'm having a hard time. Does the
a certain amount
consequence fit the...
yeah, but a certain amount of shoving and pushing between a brother and a sister is natural, believe me.
Well, right, that's where
Yeah.
I'm having trouble weighing the consequence to what they did.
Well, you know.
I tend to make the
punishment should be different.
consequence too severe, and then I feel bad about it.
No, you know, it should be appropriate. You know, if they're just arguing with each other, are they hurting each other? I mean, physically?
At times,
At
yes.
times. If they physically hurt each other, they both get the same consequence. They both get the same weight of consequence. You know, either they both lose their cell phone, or they lose a function, they lose something. And
Despite who started it.
regardless of who started it, they both get it. And I know that sounds unfair to you, but if both of them get it, it's just better. All right? Then you're not taking sides with anybody. What you're saying is the behavior is inappropriate. If you slugged him first or you slugged him first, you're still slugging. Okay? And you need to put a stop to that. Younger children who won't pick up toys and leave things laying around, you get a plastic garbage bag and you say, okay, it's cleanup time now. Anything that isn't picked up becomes mine. You've done that. And you keep it. And they have to have a certain amount of time of good behavior, a week, 2 weeks of good behavior, which means picking up their toys every day. they get the toy back. But, you know, try to relate it to whatever's going on, the consequence. Yeah.
Kind of relating to what you're saying about picking up certain things that, you know, in my case, I mean, in years past, I can remember doing something like that. My son would always go to something else, so he was just like, you know, resilience, you know, like, oh, that's okay, there's something else, kind of like that what the woman up there was saying. There's always something else they can go to, and that's kind of the problem. You know, sometimes we have too many things, but, you know, it can be just as easy as saying, oh, well, I don't care, I'll go do this or that, and it's something you really can't take away. But,
Okay.
you know, taking, I understand it. I think
What's
it's
the
great.
most unpleasant room in your house?
Pardon?
What's the most unpleasant?
Oh, the bathroom.
Okay. Have them clean the bathroom.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing.
You see what I'm saying? Nobody likes that job.
Yeah.
Give them the bathroom to clean.
Yeah, they have it.
I know that doesn't sound good, but if your child has so many things that they can always find something else to do,
Right.
have them clean the
Well,
bathroom.
I don't, it's like they really don't have that many things, but it's almost like I'm talking about resilience. They don't, they may not care. This, talking about like, you know, you're not going to Disney World, oh, that's okay. I didn't send them to Cedar Point for a school trip, but the behavior that I'm expecting hasn't exactly changed. But, you know, when they're out in the world, they seem to be fine. So is there something there too that when the kid is with us, they're always going to be, you know, there's always going to be those parent struggles because
How old is your child?
13.
Okay, some of that too is developmentally, you need to be aware of where your child is also developmentally. All right, 13-year-old boys are, you know, hormonally breaking out. And is his conflict more with you or with his father?
Yeah, obviously with me.
With you. Yeah, see, adolescence, young adolescence is the second edible stage of life. And it begins a separation individuation process. They don't want to feel warm fuzzies towards you. They don't want to be nice to you. So that's the only way that they can break away, because if they're good boys or good girls, you know, it's hard for them to break away. So you're going to see acting out behavior. But that doesn't mean that, you know, they're allowed to do whatever they want to do. You know, just because something is typical of the age doesn't mean you have to let it happen if it's an inappropriate thing. I mean, all teenagers want to drink, all teenagers want to try dope. It doesn't mean that that's what they should be doing or that you should be anointing it. We have sex now starting at the age of 13. One elementary school had to pull a boy off of a little girl in the bathroom. And it's, you know, it's just really out of control. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, when you're talking about the cell phones and you're talking about the inappropriate behavior on the internet or whatever they're doing on Facebook if they have it, you know, you're right. The main issue here is that these things are, they're given these adult tools and they don't have a conscience. Some kids have a conscience. Yes, we try, you know, we hope they have a conscience and everything. But, you know, there's a point where they're, like you said, they're growing, they're still developing, and they've been given these adult tools.
Yeah.
And it's really not even, you know, we're just ruled by the capitalism that's like putting out there, oh, it's $10 a month, you've got to get everybody one in the family, it's free. And that's how everybody's gotten addicted in my sense. The first shot of drugs is free too.
Well, I think you can see the nature of the problem when now that $10 child thing, they say, I promise not to use it inappropriately, I promise, you know. The problem is out there. Everybody knows the problem is out there. We have girls video texting, sexually video texting their boyfriends. And in one case, the boy disseminated all this stuff to his friends. So the parents of the boy were arrested for child pornography. They didn't even know what was going on. But the boy was underage, the girl was underage, 12. And the parents got arrested. If we don't tell our children what our values are, and we don't make it completely clear, and if we don't live by the values that we tell them we want them to live by, then they're not really going to feel a lot of guilt. They're not going to really feel remorse. The first thing any therapist looks at when a patient comes in, whether it's a child or it's an adult, is what is this person's capacity to experience guilt or remorse? If they cannot experience guilt or remorse, we are now dealing with character pathology, which there's no pill for character pathology. It is in the fabric of the personality and very difficult to wrench free. So, values, the sense of guilt, the sense of responsibility, the empathic awareness of other human beings. I've heard one group of girls talking in the waiting room of the clinic, and they were talking, one got into trouble for putting stuff on, Facebook, about one of their friends that was not so nice, and the mother said, "Oh my God, did you know about this?" "Oh yeah, but I didn't do it." "But were you with her when she did it?" "Yeah." You see, you're still participating. You have to feel some guilt in this world, and to understand people and to feel people. Not just to hear their words, but to feel them. Yeah.
I have a 13-year-old, and he's, like most kids, heavily into technology. Surpasses me and my husband. We're both very technical people. He's started playing video games at an early age, mastered them, moved on to role-playing games on the internet, got bored with that, then started assembling computers. And now, since 90% of his homework is done on the computer, we're having a very hard time with him being able to control his computer usage and get on a normal daily schedule.
He's become obsessed.
He's very obsessed. Parental controls on the computer have not worked. Changing passwords have not worked. He wipes the computer clean. He finds a way. Everything's on the internet, how to bypass all these parental controls as well. It's very easy for him to figure out. One person had suggested to me to talk to the school and ask them to go back to the old-fashioned way of giving him everything that came back and going back to teaching independence, because everything we try to restrict to him becomes more and more difficult, and we're ineffective because of his ignorance of technology.
So when you try to restrict him, he becomes more defiant?
Yeah, in fact, that is another challenge that he needs to overcome.
Okay.
And we're rendered helpless.
Yeah. Does he ever become obsessed with any other things besides the computer? Does he ever become obsessed with anything else?
It's mostly the computer, but that's part of his personality. But right now, when he loved to read when he was young, he was obsessed with reading and reading books away. So it's part of his personality. But right now, he wants to major in engineering. He's so technology driven that he doesn't really have a sense of what the limits are. And so what happens is he's on the computer, doing his homework, chatting with friends, looking up stuff, and his homework doesn't get done until about 1 a.m., 2 a.m. He has a hard time getting up in the morning, getting to school. He doesn't eat lunch at school because he's trying to finish up homework. He's got, stomach problems, acidity problems.
First of all, move his computer down to where?
We've done that.
Okay.
Right in the middle of the kitchen.
Right in the middle of the kitchen. All right. Here's the rule. He has 2 hours on the computer to do his homework. Somebody has to sit with him. If he doesn't do his homework, in those 2 hours, then disconnect the computer. And every computer you have in the house, disconnect. All right? Someone has to sit with him for 2 hours. He's developed an obsessional neuroses, and you don't want him to become manic.
Right.
And he's going to start becoming manic.
I've seen that when I have taken everything away, he walks around the house, doesn't know what to do with himself.
Yeah,
I forced him to go to bed at like 11 one day. He didn't get to sleep
yeah.
until 3 in the
Three.
morning.
Yeah, he's developed some mania. And you need to maybe have him evaluated, because they can give him something to bring him down a little bit, because he's up here now. It's like an addiction. You can't get enough of it. And he's very bright, I'm sure, and that makes it that much more complicated. But I would sit with him for the 2 hours, either you or your husband, sitting right next to him, and he's gonna, fight that, but that's what has to happen. And at the 2-hour time, whatever homework is done, you disconnect. Typically, what does he get, 2 to 3 hours of homework a night?
Yeah, 2 to 3 hours. If he does it,
But 2 hours should be the
Sure.
limit. He's a bright kid. I know that it's an intrusion on you and your husband, but this is to help him contain. You have to help him.
And I mostly do sit behind him, and all the chat screens pop up, and then I turn that out, that out. My problems are having to get rid. And this 15-year-old is not going to.
Well, then your husband's going to have to dedicate himself to the 8-year-old, and you're going to have to dedicate or take turns and switch. But what I'm concerned about, you see, is once you turn off that computer, he's going to be agitated. And then I would ask him, or one of you go out with him and walk a mile, let him burn it off a little bit. Because that's what we do with when people get manic, we say, get outside, walk a couple of miles and burn it off. And that'll help him a little bit, but I would still have him evaluate.
Talk about empathy, and that's what I'm wondering, raising our son and how I instill that in him. Because I know adults that don't have it, especially when, it comes down to them or someone else. So I see adults that don't have that. How do you make sure your child has that?
Empathy? Well, when you're watching a movie together, for example, on TV, something happens, whether it's violence or it's romantic or it's sad, to ask them how they like, for example, think that person is experiencing. Or when they're watching it, like this gratuitous violence that kids are becoming anesthetized to.
Very
Yeah, at your house. Yeah, but there are other houses. But empathy really is, if you can teach reciprocity, that it is not, it's like an electric current. Your son's an engineer. An electric current has to run both ways in order for the light to go on. If it's only running one way, the light won't go on. Teaching children reciprocity, helping with chores, doing the dishes, setting the table, taking out the garbage, going to see grandma, walking the dog, being responsible for the dog. That they are giving and not just taking. They become aware that the other person has needs of them and expectations, and little bit by little bit, and when you withhold things from them, they'll see what it is, to feel disappointment. You have to just expect reciprocity. As long as that is going, they'll develop empathy. As long as you talk about your value systems, this is how we feel about, we're not racist, we're not this, we're not that, we believe in following the rules, you cannot act out in school, you cannot lay hands on any human being, and this is why, because when you do it, you cause pain to that human being. You have to be very specific with children, why you're telling them what you're telling them.
And I have that in my son, you just kicked me and that hurt. And I I don't want you to do it. You know, would you like it if someone kicked you? Yes. And he laughed.
How old is he?
4.5. And then we went to the zoo with a friend this week. The boys were equally aggressive. My son was down on the ground, the other boy kicked him. He laughed. The other mother reprimanded her son. My son said, oh, that's okay, I liked it. You know, so I don't know, you know,
Okay.
I
He
was
kicks
doing
you
that for a
at
while, but
home.
this has been going on for 3 years now, and it's getting worse.
It's been going on for 3 years? Okay. Do you put him in a timeout? And what does he do when you put him in a timeout? Does he
He
stay?
has a tantrum, you know, when I go to the door and say, you know, if you continue to scream, yell, and kick the door, you're going to be in there for 5 more minutes. And eventually he does calm down and he'll come out and say he's sorry, but he just goes right back. The next opportunity, he kicks the dog, or he, you know, and I just told him not to do that. It's just constant. I never see him getting upset.
Okay. Can you meet with me afterwards? Just because it's a little bit more involved. All right? I'd be happy to answer, talk to you about it. Okay?
Excuse me, the follow-up with empathy.
Yeah.
Should you be, I have a 13-year-old boy and a 10-year-old. Are you concerned when you see empathy to others but not to the sibling?
There's a place you let it all out of. You know, you can't yell at the boss, you kick the dog is your sibling.
That's my concern, just a complete and total lack of empathy with the sibling. And then also, what is your take on the bedroom of a 13-year-old boy?
In terms of what? I don't go there.
It drives me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What was the
I
question?
do know that the bedroom of a 13-year-old boy, that, you know, at some point you just have to close the door, but I can't close the door. I can't.
Why?
Because it drives me crazy. It just drives me crazy.
Well, that's the job of the 13-year-old boy. You know, if they won't get clean laundry if their clothes are on the floor. You don't do their laundry. Why should they make the bed if you're going to go in there and make it? Okay? Shut the door. I know you look very obsessional. So you'll be fine. It's just you're going to have to duke it through. Because now, I'm not saying that they can bring up food and all that stuff. There has to be a rule, no food up in the bedrooms. You got a house full of ants and everything else. But the fact that their clothes and their things are all over the place, no laundry gets done. You know, if the clothes aren't in the dirty. Well, he's going to care when he runs out of clothes. You know, you have school uniforms. Well, how is he going to go to school? You know. Okay.
Because that was making me crazy. I've got 2 that are 9 months apart, 11 and 12. And what I found to be most effective is if I separate them, put them in their own separate rooms, and then we can come back and talk to each other about it, about what went wrong and who had their part to play, and take accountability.
And how effective is that?
It has been very effective.
Good. How old is
11 and 12.
they're not fighting anymore?
No, I won't say that, but they know what comes next if they do.
That they get separated and put in the rooms? Yeah. Look, the thing is, one thing you have to teach your children, when you have inappropriate behavior, you have to be separated from others. You cannot stay around people if you're behaving inappropriately. All right? Now, my granddaughter, for example, is a daddy's girl. You know, my daughter takes care of her all day. She doesn't say boo. Her father comes in and it's Jesus Christ just crossed the threshold. You know, and she absolutely adores him. We're in a restaurant and she starts this squealing and she won't stop. So my daughter says to my son-in-law, here, take her out. And they think it's a punishment. She's leaving with her boyfriend. She's just totally happy. That's not a punishment. Go with the one you like least and take them out. You know, you have to separate. They have to understand they cannot be around other people when they're misbehaving. It's not going to be accepted, and it's not going to be, you know, endured, rather. It's just not.
Earlier you were talking about chores and
Yeah.
contributing. I'm finding, I definitely impose chores. They tend to be saved for weekends because of everybody's busy schedule. So how do you, I mean, I'm getting the tears and you're a taskmaster and there's so many times of fun and there's really no time during the week because, you know, between sports and homework and, I mean, we're all experiencing the same thing. So am I feeling guilt because I'm getting the tears and do I just need to stick to it or?
Well, how many chores do you give your children? I mean, are they?
Well, on the weekends, you know, I ask them to bring me the dirty laundry and help me sort it and strip their beds and try to get the sheets on if they can. It's hard, you know, if their age is right, and I say that'll help, but, I mean, there's a lot to do, you know, and I feel that if they're 9 and 11, I feel they're old enough to be contributing members of our little world.
No, they are. Maybe if you could divide it up maybe in 2 days, not have it all in one day, because the truth is they don't have time to have fun. One of the things that is of concern is that these children are over-programmed. They're going to too many things, and children need downtime. They need to decompress. They need to catch a breath. They need to just blither a little bit.
Parents do too.
I'm sorry?
Parents do.
Absolutely, parents do too, because you're doing, well, first of all, you're doing all the driving hither, thither, and yon. But what happens is you're creating this kind of pinball effect. You know, they're here, they're here. It has this kind of frenetic, strobing quality, which agitates children. It doesn't calm them. I mean, if you could cut down some of these extracurricular activities, it would be better, you know. They don't have to do everything. You know, I think parents think that if they do everything, then they get into college. But it isn't like that. You've got to give them some time to decompress. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions too, sorry. Still talking about that, but a couple things. One, I think Donna discussed about, you know, when it's appropriate to allow a child to have a cell phone, Facebook, all that stuff, and are consistent throughout the family, or, you know, someone's more responsible, can they have it earlier, that type of thing as well. And then also, we talked about the fighting between the siblings before. And I know we kind of had the approach of, you know, both in trouble, both went to blows kind of thing. But I personally experienced some with the kids that then one became the more compliant all the time, which then wasn't healthy either, because they would avoid the fight. Like, I'll just do whatever my sibling wants me to do, because if I fight, then we're going to both get in trouble. So that wasn't really healthy either. So in that circumstance, how would you suggest encouraging one to speak up for themselves, but yet not it to escalate to the violence?
Well, I think if that's an issue and you're noticing it, then you sit and talk with, you take him aside and you say, what's the deal? You need to start, you know, expressing yourself too. All right, and I will pay attention. I mean, if you give him the assurance that you will now start to pay some attention, and you see a pattern of the other child starting a ruckus with this one, then I say take just the one. Okay? But you have to...
And it is a boundary thing too, because it's like, then he kind of will do things that he knows is going to agitate his sister, of course. Right. And so, in a way, he is initiating some things, but yet, you know...
Well, that's part of the discussion,
right.
Okay?
Like you're responsible for your part of this.
Right, he's being kind of passive-aggressive here,
Right.
and so you have to kind of talk when he says, you know, she does this, she does... You said, what was going on before she did that? You know? And I think you have to, you know, cause and effect. If you're going to provoke her, don't be surprised if you get a reaction.
Right.
I mean, it's, you know.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just curious about the whole Facebook cell phone texting. Like, I have a sophomore at, you know, that I we didn't give them a cell phone until 8th grade, and we held off on texting until 9th grade, and, Facebook 9th grade, and we tend to be the strict parents, at least in his eyes, and then, so now I have a middle schooler who's asking for Facebook, asking for cell phone, and I'm like, no, we didn't do it for your older brother until 8th and 9th grade, and, and I feel like we tend to be more strict, and, which I don't care, I'm not winning the popularity, award, but I feel like, so do you give them some of these tools, and if they're using them correctly and following the rules, am I being too strict by holding off to 8th and 10th grade?
The problem is you don't really have a sure way of knowing if it's being used appropriately or inappropriately, nor will you in the 9th grade. But I think sometimes what comes across in some of these, things like the cell phones and some of the stuff that's sent is too soon for these kids to be dealing with it as an issue. Kids are, sexuality, for example, is no longer what we knew it to be. We used to connect sex with romance. You felt something for someone, you had love, and it would lead to sex. Now sex is an activity, like playing tennis. Oh, we met at a party, we hooked up, it was, don't even know you. So you see children objectifying sexuality. They're not having sex with a subject, they're having sex with an object. And a lot of sexual material is now coming through cell phones. A lot of it. So it's only for that reason that I say if you can hold off until 9th, 10th grade, it would be better. 9th, you won't be able to hold off to 10th, 9th. Only because developmentally these kids are not ready. They're not ready for this yet. They don't even know what they're doing. They're just doing. And what happens too is when they start so early, by the time they're in their 40s, my brother's a gynecologist, and one of the things that happens is that when women are coming into his office in their 40s with a lack of interest sexually, they've already burned out. Yeah.
Could you please address the issue of two parents with different values? One likes to set boundaries and strong values, the other one, perhaps if his child was never given boundaries and feels it's good to give to the kids and make them feel good, and it's very conflicting.
He's wrong. Okay, sure. He is. I'm not saying, look, when you say you're a strict mother, or you say you want boundaries, I'm assuming that you also give love and attention and affection to your children, right? So that there is a balance. But not setting any boundaries, not putting up any containing wall. Look, your brain has a skull to protect it, right? Nerves have sheaths over them, your body has skin over it. Why? To maintain the integrity of whatever it's protecting. That's what you're doing for your children by setting boundaries. You're creating a containing wall to protect them and to help them develop character. You don't have to be, Scrooge, but, you're the most neurotic mother, you're the worst mother, nobody's mother is like you. You're going to hear all of that. It doesn't matter. Your job, your responsibility isn't to the other children. Your responsibility is to your child. And you're swimming upstream because parents will not necessarily support other parents. They'll tell you you're old-fashioned, you're this, you're that. Your husband is wrong. He is very wrong because learning boundaries is crucial.
Can you repeat what you said? Because I didn't hear it.
I'm sorry?
I didn't hear what you said. No, I didn't hear what the question was.
The original question is, what do you do when you have two parents who parent differently?
Oh, that's my problem.
What if there are two parents and divorced. And they parent differently. And it's an unfortunate overall.
But what did he say that you said was wrong? What did he say?
Well,
How do you deal with it?
if you cannot convince him to do it, to set some boundaries, then it's worth your while to make an appointment with a child psychologist and let an objective third party tell him why setting boundaries and doing this type of thing is crucial for the child. Because you arguing with him, he's in his state of righteous indignation and you're in your state of righteous indignation and nobody moves forward in any way. But a professional is a professional. And if he still doesn't want to do it, then all you can do is do what you're doing as long as he doesn't undo what you do. Which I've seen happen too. Because then what he's doing is taking away any importance that you have in this child's life. He's negating you. And that's not good for the child.
It happens just as simple as when you say no food out of the kitchen. But when they go get an ice cream and the husband says, it's okay, they're doing their homework. They can take it in the family room. They can take it in their room. And you're like, I said no food out of the kitchen. I mean, it's just a simple rule. But,
And
you know,
I said to my husband, when
they
it
won't.
gets spilled on the carpet, you clean it up. I'm not cleaning it up. And that worked.
If you've got a husband who's going to clean it up.
It worked when we thought about it that way.
Yeah.
But they will undo everything. Just,
Either you're doing homework
Yeah.
or you're eating ice cream. If you're eating ice cream, stay in the kitchen and eat ice cream. If you're doing homework, go back and do your homework, even if you need a snack.
but she's right, it just gets, you're right, it just gets totally undone. Any small rule, they won't.
Oh, I'm sorry. The divorce,
No, just the fact that she's saying no, he's saying it's okay.
yeah. He's saying I didn't answer your question, I'm sorry. Your husband has to kind of, you guys have to sit down and talk.
Right, it's the same issue that the woman up there is
Right,
talking
but you
about.
have to decide what outcomes are you looking for here. What is the big deal for your husband? Why can't the child, stay in the kitchen to have ice cream? Is there a control issue? Is it a boy?
Yep.
Yeah. So we've got...
And they don't want to listen to the mom, so the husband's teaching them not to listen to the
But the
mom.
husband can identify with the boy about a female kind of controlling.
Yeah.
By the way, you have to be very careful with boys in a certain way because boys are different than girls in a lot of ways, but one of the big significant ways is girls are the weaker sex. Society accepts that. We're vulnerable, so if somebody yells at us or something, well, we take it. But boys, you have to be careful how you do it with boys, because it can be very symbolically castrating for a boy to always lose an argument, to always be dominated. And I think your husband is identifying with him a little bit, and he's the one that's really rebelling against you, not your son.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you and he need to talk about it.
I don't want to be where my kids are totally dominated by a woman, because then they'll go out there and I don't want, a girl doing their term paper. I want them to be their own guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm trying to back off.
Yeah. Well, they have to feel like they can win once in a while. You do have to let your kids win once in a while. Please, let them win once in a while. Pick and choose, but let them win once in a while. So now, when they're divorced, back to yours, there's only so much control you have, unfortunately. I mean, you can get a parental, there's a parental, I forgot what they call it, it's parental something that the friend of the court has.
A mediator?
A mediator, parental mediator. No, it's not even a mediator, it's a guy, that,
Parenting coordinator.
yes. Parenting